All right, here in this lesson, we're going to learn different ways to format a paragraph, whether it be changing the line spacing between single and double, formatting a bulleted list or a numbered list, and things of that nature. So let's go ahead and get started with this. Now, this is the folder that you previously should have already copied over to your OneDrive account. And so what I'm going to do is, if you'll come over here in this folder right here, Original Word 2016 Student Data Files, and this is actually Lesson 4 from the textbook I'm taking this from, so you'll need to look in Lesson 4 folder. And the file that you're going to need to open is this one right here, Books Beyond. Now, if you are wanting to keep an original copy of this file, you'll actually want to open a copy of this and save it somewhere else. Now, if you just want to click this and open it up and start working, that's fine, but you may need this original copy again at some point. So I just want to come over here and I want to click this button right here. It's got the 3 dots on it. And I want to copy this to, so I select copy to, and I'm going to save it on my OneDrive in a different folder. And I have created a folder called My Work, and I'm just going to go ahead and copy it here. And then that way I've still got the original file. And then I should be able to come up here on my computer. If you see up here, I've got this little notification. It says one item, copied one item to My Work. I should be able to click on that, and it's going to take me to that file. And here is the file that we need to open up, Books Beyond. Now, again, please remember the reason why we're doing this is because I have to assume that students watching this video only have a Chromebook, and you only have Microsoft Word online. And again, my disclaimer is that I typically use the full desktop version of Microsoft Word and Excel and PowerPoint and whatnot, and I'm typically not in a situation where I have to use this, but given the circumstances, I assume that that's what you have. Now, there's a couple of things that I've learned since I did the videos for Lesson 3 is that, first of all, if you come over here, you'll notice that you can see much more of the toolbar up here, and that's because over here in your window there is a button or an arrow that's for switching ribbons, and if you click that, that basically just collapses and shows you either a minimum number of buttons, or it'll show you more buttons. And me, I like having everything displayed, so if you find this little button over here and click it, it should show you everything. Now, when you do that, this brings me to something else that came up in Lesson 3 that wasn't a big deal for Lesson 3, but it's a bigger deal for Lesson 4. It's being able to see your non-printing characters. Now, your non-printing characters are basically, it's when anytime you hit enter, or you hit the space bar, or you hit the tab key, it's the icon that's displayed on your monitor that lets you know that you've hit one of those keys on your keyboard. Now, to see your non-printing characters, you would have to come over here under the Home tab and under the Paragraph group, and you've got this button right here, and this is your Show and Hide button. And again, so this is going to show and hide your non-printing characters. And when you're editing text that's already been created, I typically recommend that you always have these displayed. So if you click this button, you'll see here these paragraph marks that indicate that you have hit enter. And here you see dots between the words that indicate that you hit the space bar. Now, if you were to open this, if you're on a Windows computer, or even if you're on a Macintosh computer, and you open this file in the actual desktop app, and I'm going to do this real quick. You don't have to do it, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to open it up in actual Microsoft Word. And when I hit that button here in Microsoft Word, in this case, you don't actually see anything here because apparently this was actually formatted with a first line indent, which that's something else that we're going to look at here. Typically, if I'm typing this document from scratch, instead of changing my first line indent on this paragraph like you see here, what I would do is just hit the tab key. So we'll talk more about that later, but I want to go ahead and close this back out. And every so often, I'll try to remember to open this up in Microsoft Word, the desktop version for Windows, and do a little bit of a comparison. So I want to close this out. And again, please remember, because this file was given to you on your OneDrive account, you should be in your Microsoft OneDrive account viewing this in Microsoft Word Online and not in Google Docs. So I want you to make sure that you are viewing this from your OneDrive account, which is, if you go to office.com, if you needed to, you go to office.com and sign in with your credentials. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with this. And the first thing that we're going to do, and please remember, I'm taking this lesson from the textbook that was designed for certification, and we can't do certification if all you've got is a Chromebook or a Macintosh computer, so I'm just having to make this work. All right, so a paragraph. I know in your language arts class you probably learned that a paragraph is typically a group of 5 or more sentences related to a particular topic, if you will. Well, in Microsoft Word, a paragraph is more of a term that describes how a document is formatted, meaning every time you hit enter, you create a new paragraph. So, for example, and I want to click my show and hide button again to turn this on. Here, I hit the enter button was hit, and you have a new paragraph. Down here, the enter button was struck, and you have a new paragraph. Down here, the enter button was struck, so you have a new paragraph. So a paragraph is basically anytime you hit the enter key. Okay, and typically, in order to make text easy to follow and whatnot, you would want to have a new paragraph every time you change thoughts or topics within a document. Now, different ways you can format a paragraph. One of the things that you can do is to change your indent, meaning how far away from the left margin or the right margin is your text. This over here is indented. Now, this particular paragraph has a first line indent applied to it of 1/2 inch, meaning that every new paragraph, the first line is going to be indented 1/2 inch. You could also indent from the right side of the page if you're wanting to temporarily pull in change the formatting to help you to identify a long quotation in a document. And there's also an indent called a hanging indent, which if you are doing a research report, and one of the lessons you're going to do in here is going to be formatting a research topic, research report, you'll see a hanging indent there, but you'll see one here too. All right, so now that we've got this document open, let's go ahead and get started with this file. What we want to do, and again, please remember, I'm looking off of a textbook that is not designed for the online version of this, so I'm going to have to kind of feel my way through this lesson myself. What they want you to do first is to select the 4 paragraphs under the word acknowledgement. So you can click right here, click, hold, and drag to select these 4 paragraphs right here with your mouse. And then the next thing that they want you to do is they want you to, and you've already got a first line indent here, so that the first line is indented 1/2 inch. Now let me show you where you would go, and there's a couple of different ways you could do this, but here under the paragraph group, this is called a dialog box launcher, and if you click that, you're going to see over here where it says indentation, and this document, it already has a special first line indent. Now, if you were to click this arrow, you've got 2 options here. You've got a first line indent and a hanging indent. Right indent is something that is, it's an option that's available on the full desktop version. So all I would want you to do is just to see what it looks like, because I don't plan on redoing this part of the video just for this, is if you need to, go ahead and change this to none and click OK. And then you're going to see how the first line is not indented on these paragraphs. And then you can go back and change it to where the first line is indented. on this document. And then what you would have to do is to click OK. So that's the first thing you need to do. Now, the next thing that you would want to do is they want you to select the 4 paragraphs under the word introduction. So down here, these paragraphs are not indented. See how they all align flush at the left margin? Typically, you indent the first line of a paragraph. So you would click, hold, and drag, or use your mouse button to scroll down and select these 4 paragraphs. And then again, you would come up here if you click this dialog box launcher. And again, you would want to change under the special group. You would want to select first line. And by the way, notice here where it says by, and by default it says 0.5 inches, so half an inch. If you wanted to change this to 1 inch, you can change it to 1 inch or whatever it is that you wanted to change it to. So what you'll do is you'll click OK, and now that the first line of these paragraphs are indented. All right, so the next thing they want you to do is to select both paragraphs under equal employment opportunity and diversity. Okay. Actually, I skipped ahead a little bit. They want you to select the all of the paragraphs under general performance guidelines. I was looking a little bit ahead, and that I would assume that would include this numbered list and this bulleted list. All right, so we're going to select all of those, and we want to change this. Again, make sure they've all got a first line indent of half an inch. So again, you click on that dialog box launcher, and you would change this to special, first line, and then half an inch, 0.5. Click OK. And then you're going to see how these are indented. And we'll worry about this numbered list and bulleted list here shortly, although I'm not quite sure if it's going to work out the way I would expect it to work out, because we're not in the full version of Word right now. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is equal employment opportunity and diversity. And again, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to select these 2 paragraphs, and that's the end of the document. And we're going to come up here again under the paragraph options dialog box launcher, and again we're going to change this to first line and half an inch. Click OK, and now you see that the first line of this is indented half an inch on each selected paragraph. And because we're saving this into our OneDrive folder, the changes are automatically saved, kind of like what you may be used to with Google Docs. So now we're going to learn about hanging indents. Now again, a hanging indent is the opposite. A hanging indent is where the first line of a paragraph is flush with the left margin, and all the subsequent lines of a paragraph are indented. So what we want to do is we want to come back to the first 2 paragraphs under the heading Acknowledgement. And we want to select these 2 paragraphs. The first 2 paragraphs right here, and we want to go back to this dialog box launcher for the paragraph group, and we want to change this from first line to hanging, and we're going to leave it at half an inch and click OK. And then you see how the first line is flush with the left margin, but the subsequent lines of that paragraph are indented half an inch. That's a hanging indent. So now we're going to select the last 2 paragraphs and do the same thing. And I went a little too far with scrolling, so we're going to try this again. And again, I'm just repeating the process, as you can see. All right. Now, one thing I will point out to you, this last one, I'm going to do this just for the sake of example. I'm going to undo what I just did. Here's your undo button, and you'll notice how that hanging indent is no longer applied to these two paragraphs because that was the last thing I did, and I just undid it. What you could have done is you could have also come up here and clicked somewhere in this paragraph. If you'll remember from the last lesson, your Format Painter button, you could have clicked that one time, and then I think you could actually just click inside of this paragraph. And I don't think you have to click, hold, and drag, but if I just click, and I'm right, I just clicked, you see how that paragraph formatting was applied to that whole paragraph. And then I'm going to repeat the process down here so you get the same result. It's just you're taking the formatting of one paragraph and applying it to another. So that is it for the first part of this lesson on how to change a first line and a hanging indent on a paragraph.